Good evening, my friends. So I think this is day 16, 15 maybe. I'll need to check it out, of our 30-day challenge with social media's AOK Business Mastery Program, live blogging, getting yourself out there, making yourself more available and letting people know who you are and what you do and what you offer. So I mentioned earlier on a Facebook post that I'd been to a wonderful day with two of my grandchildren, Simone's boys, Hunter and Saxon, book club parade thing and grandparents' morning tea. And I kid you not, there were literally 60 platters of wonderful, delicious food available with cups of tea and coffee. But prior to the morning tea, I had been in Hunter's class where he's practicing this whole thing about the Roman legionnaires. And I love Steiner, how they go through year by year, they go through each of the, what do you call them? Communities, histories of mythology. And one year they'll study the Judaic traditions that gave rise to the Western religions as we know them today, Judaism and Christianity, the myths and legends there, the Greek myths and legends another year. Hunter has just finished doing the Norse mythology of Odin and Loki and Freya and all those wonderful things. And of course, in teaching the children about the myths and the legends and the stories, it imbues in them a sense of who they are and what they are and what is this thing called life all about. I had the great pleasure of making an entire rune set for Hunter's class. And fortunately, including Damien, there were exactly the right number of runes for exactly the class members. And they each delved into the bag and chose one. And I had simplified quite powerfully for them what it means to them to have chosen that rune, what it speaks to them about. So I got to do that with Hunter's class. And this year I got to do it with Haley's class. So it's one of the joys of Steiner. It's a real education. But it had me thinking about the marketplace, the untrammeled, mad consumerism that we are in currently, and the addiction to stuff. And it's genuinely out of control and insane at the moment. And, you know, Aristotle said over 2,400 years ago, or thereabouts, 2,300 to 400, thereabouts, when he was speaking of the marketplace, he spoke of it in Greek words I can't remember, but the meaning of it was that the marketplace is a fine thing because it allows for the exchange of goods and people get needs met and services provided, etc. But the risk of it, if it is not regulated, if it is not controlled, if it is not tightly controlled, in fact, then its natural predilection is to draw out of the human in its lower animal body lust, greed, for want of a better definition, and the acquisitiveness of our nature, getting more stuff. And that if it is left untrammeled, then it can become an addiction. It can actually, if it's not regulated, then that greed and acquisitiveness can actually overtake the lower animal human so that it becomes a sole preoccupation instead of the sole preoccupation of growth, education, evolution, the meaning and purpose of life. Why are we here? What's it all about, kind of thing. And that if it's left unregulated and allowed to run its own course, that this can lead to moral degeneration. And as he spoke of it, the end of democracy, that these forces will actually take over and become the reality. And this was 2,400 years ago, for God's sake. And since that time, the market has never been controlled. Everything else is controlled. How you drive your car, what foods you eat, how you eat them, how to borrow a library book, how to cross the road. Everything is tightly controlled by market forces, I might add. But the market itself is completely, still to this day, completely unregulated, uncontrolled, and in fact has led to what we are witnessing today. The moral degeneration of a society, and the acquisitiveness that has taken over and prevents us actually stopping, looking at ourselves and finding out what is this hole we're trying to fill with things. It began to reach kind of weird proportions in 1974. Up until 1974, there were laws pretty well all over the world that said, for example, that children could not be advertised to. You know, in the era of about 20 years of television by then, there had been some regulation on market forces that said you cannot advertise to children. It is immoral, it is ridiculous, they have no spending power, why would you waste your time anyway? But also it was the moral turpitude of it that the regulations were put in place for. But in 1974, that corrupt bastion that we see yet again in current American presidency, Richard Nixon, he said, of course, in the pay of the market forces, he obliterated those regulations on advertising to children, and he said, and I quote, "I think we can trust the market forces to take care of our children." Jesus Christ. Anyway, so up until that time, 4% of parental income was spent on children's pleasure needs, on their acquisitions, on their whatevers. Once he unleashed the monster, it is now at 28% and still climbing, okay? And we all know the power of pester power. Put a child in front of an ad where they see it with a bright, shiny toy and, you know, mummy, can I, daddy, can I, until in the end we say, oh, for Christ's sake, have it. Pester power is a very well-known, well-researched, documented advertising tool, okay? When I was training in child and adolescent psychiatry back in the day, we were being shown lots of videos about how the child's mind works, how every mind works, blah, blah, blah. But I was being shown a series of videos at that time when I was training down at Travancore in Melbourne of actual 6-month-old babies all wired up to EEG machines sitting in front of big television screens, bigger than your average, we'd take them for granted now, but they were very large for their time when this research was being done in the late 70s, once the monster had been let off the leash. And they were throwing ads and things up in front of these 6-month-old babies, and there was a whole teams of psychologists that were there working on this, and they were responding to the baby's EEG brain patterns and what got the child in, what stimulated the child, what got its attention. And this psychologist information was then given to the actual people who wrote the ads and did all this. And so they started targeting children. I'm talking about 6-month-old babies, okay? That's how vile this whole system is. And it's so much more refined now, seriously. You add in social media, and you add in that whole fear of missing out, the whole FOMO thing where, you know, we all post on social media. I'm a great one at it, both for business and for pleasure. And it's a great way of staying in touch with my, hi Zviko, great to see you here, lovey. And it's a great way of staying in touch with my nieces and nephews who live from Cairns to Perth and what have you. It's lovely to stay in touch. I enjoy it immensely. But I am not bound in that way, because I'm an old lady now, of needing anyone's approval, what have you. But we do tend to share the good stuff, you know. If we're dealing with something at home and blah, 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 we tend to just deal with it. But if we want to share with our tribe, we share the fun things we're doing. That's a natural human thing. But it is so powerfully written and prescribed now. And remember, we've got a whole generation that's grown up on this stuff. That in that normal psychosis of adolescence, when the whole world is insane and nothing makes sense, Yeah, as I've said a couple of times already in these blogs, put them in front of a screen that constantly reminds them of their inadequacies, of what they're missing out on. It's just horrible. It's rampant, you know, and it covers and governs everything. It garners all things. And in the world that we live in, everything has become commodified and sold back to us, you know. Love, we don't know what love is, but we are sold it in a jingle and a simulacra of what love is, and it's commodified and sold back to us. Spirituality is commodified and sold back to us. Everything is commodified and sold back to us until we are living in what the great French philosopher Baudrillard described as the desert of the real. We're not living, we're living in this desert of pretend. And it's a simulacra of life. It's not real. We're attempting to fill the void within us that exists in all humans, by the way, but once upon a time we used to explore such things with philosophy and education and living a life and learning by knocks and balances. We're attempting to fill this void with external things. Let me have this, let me have that, let me shop, let me buy, and it makes that pain go away for an instant. But the void in our heart is so large now and so real now that it doesn't matter how much stuff we try and fill it with, we are still achingly alone. And we are cut off. We're empty on the inside and we're cut off from what is needed. That's how it works, okay? We then compound this by isolating and non-moving of children. I was reading a really depressing article the other day. Well, it wasn't depressing, it's just life. It's worth observing. But, where teachers were talking about 5-year-old children in their first year of school who keep falling off their chairs. They don't have the body stability from climbing trees, running up hills, falling down, rolling down in the grass. Do you remember how much fun that is? Getting on a piece of cardboard and shinnying down the side of a cliff until you crash into the rocks below and hope you haven't broken any bones. Children are not playing, they're not climbing trees, they're not doing those things. We are in this world of non-movement. You know, I've seen an 18-month-old baby who was flipping a magazine with their fingers trying to make it turn over. Didn't realise you turned the page in such things, okay? A toddler doing this. And we live in houses now, Legoland houses, where there are no yards. It's fence to fence eaves of the building. There's no yard. So nobody has to maintain anything, but it means there's no place for children to play. And at the same time, we don't let them out on the street to play. And we don't let them go down 200 yards down the road to the park to play. Because we're all helicopter parenting and terrified of the demon kidnapper who's out there waiting to steal them. And those are shocking and terrible crimes. But they have not changed per capita since 1914 when those records were starting to be taken. The actual event has not changed in well over 100 years, but we're all so much more terrified of it that we don't even let our children out to play anymore, okay? You know, I remember my daughter Simone talking to me once how she'd seen this horrifying thing on television somewhere, and I'm going back about a decade, where she'd seen an exercise bike for toddlers, to plant your toddler in front of the screen and they can move their little legs and wobble, okay, instead of taking them out to the park. And so we've stopped our children moving, we've planted them in front of a screen, and that screen constantly reminds them of what they need, what they should have, how to pester mummy to get it, how to pester daddy to get it, and all their friends have got it, and so therefore they have to have it or the world will come to an end. And the screen time is this constant distraction, they have no time to discover themselves, to figure out who they are, and they are losing an ability to focus. You know, as my friend Trail said some time ago, the two things that were required to get us out of the trees, really, and form society were the ability to delay gratification and to focus on a larger purpose. And in a generation and a half, we have taken away from children the ability to focus on a larger agenda or a longer agenda, and there's no delayed gratification. In fact, they're getting screen time. We consider them clever for multitasking. They're not multitasking, they're multi-distracting themselves. And so their brains aren't functioning. They're not learning the things that are essential for forming life. And this is heartbreaking. You know, in one generation, I saw some research on this the other day, the suicidal ideation, the anxiety and depression that children experience has risen 71% in a single generation. Suicidal ideation, depression and anxiety. For God's sake, you know, we are literally in a crisis with our kids, with our humanity. And the parents are not much better. They're busy, they're distracted, they're on their screens, they're doing the FOMO. You see it everywhere. You know, the number of times I've been at the pool in summer with some of the grandkids, and little kids are busting their guts and busting their chops to show mum or dad how clever they are at jumping in the pool or swimming or whatever. And there's mum on the side of the pool on a screen, or dad doing the same thing. Yeah, that's lovely, darling. Keep going. And this leads to a profound sense of alienation and isolation. We are human in relation to other humans. That's how we know what it is to be a human, in relation to being in contact and connected to other humans. I think it was Terence that said that. If I'm wrong, someone will correct me. But all this stuff, this commodification, you know, all of this stuff that we buy, this is the other horror story of it. It all comes from third world countries where people are being paid slave labour conditions, $1.20 an hour for knitting your jumper that you get for $2 off eBay, and then it doesn't fit, so you throw it out. I was talking to my physiotherapist today, and she was saying she can't get over the number of op shops showing up everywhere and how much crap is in them. That's the only place she shops. And that's where I do most of my shopping. And as I said the other night, we hand things on as much as possible. We recycle. It's an ethical responsibility. But, you know, it's incredible. These third world countries that were, you know, when the plague of white man spread out of Europe across the world, destroying hundreds of millions of indigenous people and indigenous cultures around the world, while they raped and pillaged and enslaved and tortured and brutalized the people they were stealing from. Okay? And then finally, at the end of the Second World War, when those nations started clawing back and saying, no, we want our land back, we want our home back, we want our lives back. And so finally the colonialists were kicked out, but they left despots in power who were paid enough money to keep them happy, so that the colonialists from back home in England, Portugal, Spain, France, Germany, and now America, of course, the greatest hegemony of horror in the world that the world has ever seen, they're still stealing blind from these nations, and the people are still enslaved and still poverty-stricken, and now they're making shit products for us to buy cheaply to wear once and throw away. Your $2 jumper is built on slave labour. It dehumanises us all, and that's something else you need to think about. There was another interesting piece of research that came out from the United Kingdom this week, where they'd surveyed a lot of people. And if it's applying in the United Kingdom, it's applying in America, it's applying here, it's applying across all Western democracies and affluent countries. 89%, I kid you not, 89% of young people aged between 18 and 29, 89% of them felt their life was meaningless and pointless. We are in a crisis, an existential crisis as a species, as a planet. And these children who are feeling so depressed, suicidal and alienated, and that life is meaningless and pointless, who are constantly being reminded how inadequate and alienated and isolated they are, okay? And they're watching the grown-ups in the room, I use the term loosely, they're watching the grown-ups in the room not give a fuck about the world, not give a shit about climate change, irrespective of what you believe about what's happening and what's causing it. No one's doing anything about it. If they believe it's human-oriented fossil fuel burning, then why the fuck are we still burning fossil fuels? Why are they talking about nuclear power? We live in Australia with more sun and wind and tidal power and geothermal power than we could ever use. But no, let's build another coal station. Let's open another mine, because those despots in power are still stealing blind from everyone, and they don't give a continental toss about the rest of the world, including you who vote for them, by the way. And your government is not a government anymore. It hasn't been for a long time. It is a handmaiden to the dark corporations who've been controlling the world for far too long. We are witnessing the modern day Roman barbarians. They've just got polished nails and Armani suits. So what do we do about this? Seriously, it is a crisis. And these poor bloody kids who are watching the whole world, and they're more awake than anyone that's ever been here. Anyone that's ever been here. Remember, you take all of your bloodline knowledge and then build on it. These kids are more awake than anything, and they are looking at horror at what we are doing and our lack of care. The fact that the knuckle-dragging morons voted in this liberal government to do more of the same for another 3 years, we'll be lucky to have a country left by the time it's done. And these kids are watching this. They watch us not give us stuff. Plastics in absolutely everything. We have to change it, one starfish at a time, people. You know, I remember back in the 70s, 80s, when the crown of thorns starfish first started invading the Great Barrier Reef. And I was listening to a marine biologist talk about, you know, because there was bloody billions of the things, and they're consuming everything. And he was asked, how do we stop this? How do we do it? And he said, one crown of thorns starfish at a time. And that's what we have to do. We can't change our government. We really can't. We can't change the corporate powers except through spiritual means, which we'll talk about soon. And in fact, it's a nice topic for conversation about how we really change things on the inside out and how we fill the void from within, because that's the only way you can do it. But we can change it one starfish at a time. Gandhi, I think it was, that talked about, you know, being the peace you want to see in the world, be the love you want to see in the world. The Dalai Lama reiterates it. All wise men and women of wisdom talk about it, okay? So we must change. We must change. We must understand that there's a hole in our heart that cannot be filled from the outside. We must, as grandparents and parents, put down our devices on a regular basis. We must connect. We've got to spend time with these babies in nature. Laugh. Laugh with them. When was the last time you laughed? Do you know that small children around 3 or 4 years of age laugh 120 times a day? Do you know how often we laugh a day? We're lucky if it's 5, you know, for God's sake. Start living, start connecting, start laughing. Even if you don't feel like laughing, there's a wonderful exercise where you sit down with your whole family, you sit around in a corner of the floor, round the fire, whatever. And first you tell each other what you love about each other. I love this about you. I love that you are kind and generous and you look after your little brother. I love that you help with the chores around the house. I love this. I love your smile. I love the way you make me laugh. And then when you've done all that, when everyone's had a chance to share how beautiful you all are, then practice laughing. Dads are usually good to kick this one off, by the way. And you simply laugh. It sounds weird when you first get started, but it's very infectious laughter. And soon the whole family's rolling around the place laughing and hugging and enjoying each other. Play, be silly, get board games out, read to your children, play cards, okay? Make a difference in your own family, and like one crown of thorn starfish at a time, you will change the world. Learn to fill the void within yourself. Practice loving yourself. Those things I posted the other night about standing in front of the mirror and saying, I am worthy of being here. I am worthy of being loved. I thank you for the beauty and love that I am. That stuff really works. You've got to do it for 8 weeks to knock off the fear one and bring in the love one, but do it, persist in it for the sake of your children. Don't give babies screens. Don't give small children screens. I love the fact that all of my grandkids are in Steiner education and they don't have screens. They don't own a phone. They don't know what it means. You know, we do live in the real world. They watch the big screen, but they watch a Netflix movie or something like that. They don't watch commercial television at all. Do not expose your children to ads of any kind. They are poisonous to your children. They remind them of how empty they are, and they are poisonous to you, the parent, that then has to deal with the Christmas bullshit, okay? Have you noticed they're flogging Christmas bloody mince pies already? I'll be going to the shop next week and they'll have the bloody tinsel out. It's insane. Stop it. Stop watching that crap. It is a drug and a poison, and they've been imbuing you since you were 6 months of age with bloody these things on baby's head to figure out what makes them tick, what sparks that interest, what kicks the dopamine in, what gets the serotonin flowing, and then they flog it at you and flog it at you, okay? So stop doing that. And stop buying plastic toys, by the way. Now, I know on some level of my being that this plastic horror that we are dealing with, there is a way of dealing with it. They haven't worked it out yet, but it's to do with bacteria. And, you know, the earth will sort this shit out at the end of the day. We may not be around to witness it, but she will. But stop buying plastic shit. Stop buying plastic pieces of rubbish for your children, okay? You're right, Kai, digital hygiene, it's great. Control what your children see. Never let them see advertising. Get them away from those screens. Don't let them watch junk American television. There are so many beautiful movies out there that speak to the soul, that speak to adventure. The Bridge of Tenebrithra. There are so many, the Spider Chronicles of something or other. Fantastic films for kids to discover the dark within them, okay? Stop buying plastic. And when you go to the supermarket, stop buying plastic wrapped food. Why does a banana need to be put in a piece of plastic? It's got its own preservative skin. Same with avocados, same with everything else for that matter. I love the guy on ABC recently, the waste guy, who took a bunch of people to Coles or Woolies or one of those places, and they bought all the food they wanted, and then at the checkout, they unwrapped all of it and put it into their shopping bags and had it weighed and delivered that way. And they left something like 4, they each walked out with a couple of little bags each, but they left behind 4 big shopping trolleys of useless plastic. It's not useless, it's worse than useless, it's poisonous. Okay? And you know what? Not a single person in the supermarket spoke to them about it. I'm not touching that one. So, and stop buying plastic food. There was another research thing I saw the other day where they examined something like 24 processed food products available for sale in this country, and every single one of them had nanoparticles of plastic, and not only nanoparticles of plastic, but combined nanoplastic particles that are really toxic. It's in processed food, along with fructose that is a deadly toxin, along with aspartame, along with all those colours and all those chemicals. Stop buying processed food. I know it's easy to say that, and I know it's hard work and expensive to buy real food when you can buy a McDonald's hamburger for $2 with a packet of chips, and you know, it costs you $10 to produce a meal with real food and vegetable, but start doing what you can and stop drinking the water, okay? I'm serious. Get a good filter system if you can, and I don't mean buy bottled water. It's another filthy thing that the capitalism is doing to us, toxic capitalism, okay? Get a decent filtering water system into your house. You know, Pure Water Shop down in Fullerton, I got a reverse osmosis, pure H2O, alkalizing, blah, blah, from them about 25 years ago, I reckon. And it's moved through all of my houses, and they come and they reinstall it and change the filters every year. And I know that's doing good. I can't turn on a tap and drink that stuff full of chlorine and fluoride and everything else that's designed to dumb you down. And they are doing their level best to dumb you down. Please understand that this is not lazy marketing or whatever. There's a very real effort going on to dumb you down educationally, They're poisoning you with food. They're poisoning you with a simplistic education that has you regurgitate facts about some stupid English king that had an arrow in his eye a few hundred years ago. Who gives a shit? Get a real education. Encourage your children to get a real education. Read philosophy, read books, learn how to manage your money, learn how to manage your emotions, learn what is yours and what is not, okay? Stop drinking the water and start reading to your children and find really good, scary fairy tales, okay? Kids love being frightened. Why do you think they love those hairy rides at the Adelaide show that's coming up? And oh my God, I suppose I'm going to have to. I haven't been in about 4 or 5 years. And, you know, as much as I love the kids having the rides, you can't really go there without bloody buying into the whole garbage. So I'll think about it. I think about it every year, and I haven't been for 5 years. But I don't like the kids missing out on everything to do with that joy of being thrown upside down and inside out until you're vomiting kind of thing. I think it's good for you. But in the meantime, you can read really dark stories. And, you know, the fairy stories of old were much darker than the sanitized versions that bloody Disney paps out to you now, okay? When Rapunzel was living in her tower and the prince came to rescue her and the witch found him, he was thrown into a bush of thorns that took his eyes out, I mean, really dark and grim stories. And the reason you tell these stories to your children is so that they can navigate the dark of the psyche, which is a hell of a lot darker than anything else someone's put down on pen to paper. Children love being frightened. They enjoy it. They get excited by it. And in doing it, you're teaching them how to navigate the dark of their own inner world, okay? Stop giving them this sanitized, bloody fairy princess frozen bullshit Disney crap, while at the same time buying all that shit product for them and, letting them watch those ads. Oh, I got to have this one, Mum. I got to have that one, Granny, And take them outside, please. We are very fortunate here. We live on the back of a mountain, so the kids just bugger off and do what they like. There's a quarry down the bottom of the hill where someone started to build a house and stopped. Well, they seem to have stopped recently, for which I'm grateful. But it exposed all these wonderful crystals where the kids go down there at least 3 times a week with a bucket and a spade and dig up crystals. We're drowning in them, really. But it's great. They enjoy it. And every time it rains, all the crystals will be out. Boom, boom. So let them go outside if you can. Even if you have to sit in the car 100 metres away and watch them play in the park, to calm your own paranoia, remember the statistics. Kidnapping hasn't changed. And you can educate your children. If some bloody fool comes towards you, tell them to say bugger off and run home. But watch them have fun without you. That's how they learn. That's how they learn to fall down and pick themselves up. It's how they learn risk assessment, risk management. And do your own work, okay? Seriously, we all have to discover who we are underneath the story this pap has given us over 2,000 years. In the Piscean age, the Dark Age, the Kali Yuga, it has all been about the destruction of humans until they eat their own children. And that's what we're doing. We're eating our own children in our ignorance and our savage obligation to filling the void externally, okay? Do your work. Sort it out. Clear the anxiety. Clear the fear. Find a way to do it. There are many good people out there that can help you. There are many wonderful spiritual journeys you can go on, do a vision quest, do a sweat lodge, do a meditation. All of these things are valuable tools for helping you cut through to the heart of yourself. Stop making your kids your vicarious vehicles of your unlived life. Seriously. The amount of stuff that goes online about this child having fun, this one having this one doing that, okay? And have you seen the money people spend on birthday parties recently? I watched some ad on SBS Vice, not an ad, a doco on SBS Viceland the other day about an Indian family in Sydney who are very successful and cross-cultural and doing an amazing job as people in terms of becoming a part of the vernacular here. But one of the sons of that family was saying how for his daughter's first birthday, how they had the fairy floss machine and the entertainers and how they had he spent just shy of $200,000 on it for a first-year-old birthday party. Now he had the money. It doesn't matter. Money is relative, of course. But really, the kid would have liked the wrapping paper from a set of blocks just as happily. Okay? And weddings, this whole Instagram, social media, I've got to have the best of this and I've got to pretend to have the best of this, or otherwise I'm empty and unloved. You know, people are spending money on weddings that they could buy a bloody house with. Seriously, putting themselves into debt or saving for years to do that and then ending up either in debt or with a white dress that they hang up in the wardrobe that no one will ever wear again, and you can sell it on eBay for $200 if you're lucky that they spent 10 grand on. And for what? For what? For a marriage that doesn't work any better than anyone who got married in a back garden in a ring of flowers. Okay? And hoarding has become an all-out bloody mental disorder, you know. I mean, beyond the pale. It's not confined to someone with serious anxiety disorders or obsessive compulsive disorders. You know, I'd say probably 2 or 3 people in 10 has got a renter box down at U-Haul or somewhere like it, where they've got a whole, I hear people talk about it all the time, they have got a whole garage of shit that they can't bear to let go of. They don't look at it, it's locked away. They pay the $200 a month bill, but they never look at it. And in the meantime, they're filling up their house with more crap. And then they have to hire another U-Haul box, you know? Seriously, people. This is an absolute crisis of humanity and of the planet. You have to wake up. You have to say enough. We can all make small steps. We can all do it differently, and we are the consumer. We have a great deal more power than you can begin to understand. Remember, it was people power that pulled down the Berlin Wall. It was people power that threw the Marcoses out of the palace. For those who aren't as old as me, you may not remember that. But people power, look at what's going on in Hong Kong right now. And I'm very afraid of what's going to happen there, because I don't think the Chinese government's going to back down lightly. But it's there. We're looking at the madness in America under that lunatic they've got running the show. We'll look at the Three Stooges, Trump, Boris Johnson and Morrison. Jesus Christ, how do we come to this? We must do what we can do. Take charge of your own life. Take charge of your own heart. Do your work. Discover who you are under the desert of the real. Stop looking at this shit. If it makes you anxious on any level, stop doing it. If you can't be on social media with joy in your heart and love for the sharing, stop it. Okay? And don't give screens to your kids. Seriously, please, read to them. Read dark fairy stories to them. That's how you grow their intelligence, their real intelligence, their emotional and psychological intelligence, because you are being dumbed down every chance they get. And it's deliberate. And now they're rolling out this insane 5G weaponized system that the Pentagon built, that was used against the Iraqi soldiers to make them run away into the desert, battle-hardened soldiers running into the desert screaming by the energy they can send down these systems. And now they're going to make it and roll it out, and there'll be one within 200 meters of your house. Be mindful, people. Take back your life. Just stop doing so much. If you're in the supermarket, rip off the plastic and take home the food. Let them deal with the crap. Enough of us do that and they'll stop doing it. Hopefully. Read Herbert Marcuse. There's so much you can read. That this was being pointed at decades ago, that this is where we're at, and here we are. Here we are. So I invite you all, darlings, to become more human, to understand that we're all fighting the same big, hard fight inside. Be kind to each other. Be kind to your neighbour. Be kind to your family. Be kind to your work colleagues. Be kind to yourself. Do your work. Think. Understand that every cheap, nasty thing you buy in a moment of weakness, of FOMO on the internet, you're exploiting slave labour, child labour in a third world country that it was already impoverished by our luxury. Become aware that you are a global citizen in a global society. What happens to them happens to you. There is no separation. We are all one consciousness and we all have a duty of care to each other. So thank you for humouring my slightly political ramblings tonight. But these things matter. We do need to think about them, okay? And I promise to get something back towards something more psychological or emotional that can help you work with things tomorrow, okay? I'm grateful for everyone that turns up here and makes comments and shares their feedback. It helps me understand what I'm doing in here. And yes, Chris, I would like to be part of that flash mob of all of us going into supermarkets and ripping off the plastic off food. We should plot and plan a little about that, darling. I'd like to see that too. Anyway, my darlings, journey well. It's Thursday night. Is it? No, it's Wednesday night. I'll be heading down to Wollonga tomorrow to spend the day with my beautiful youngest grandson. I hope you're all having a lovely day, but become more mindful, become more aware, understand you have a great deal more power than they have led you to believe in their dumbing down of you. It's your power they're absolutely terrified of. And remember, people power changes everything. Love you all. Talk to you soon. See you tomorrow. Thank you again.